This isn't a podcast about war, it's a podcast about movies, but war has a way of making its way into movies. We're two Americans, though not voluntarily, and our country has done a lot of war. To try to understand that a little better, we're watching movies from countries and people the United States has been at war with, both past and present. Today we're watching a film from Nicaragua, Alex Cox's 1987 Walker. Pat.
Bacon.
What have you been watching lately?
So, a thing I've noticed about this kind of the format we've got going on here, which is similar to a lot of other movie podcasts that I know I listen to and know folks on. This what we've been watching thing has this problem of we record every other week rather than every week, and I watch a movie a day. So I gotta be selective about what I am sharing here, just so that this isn't the entire podcast.
Okay.
So my simple answer is I've mostly been watching some horror garbage.
I love horror garbage.
So I've on Letterboxd there's a number of like these challenge lists that go around, like Criterion Challenge every year. Of course, Sombenuary. The month dedicated to Usman Somben. Anyway, that's my challenge. Not many people do it, but people should do it. But every October, kind of maybe the most popular like single challenge on Letterboxd is Hooptober, which has been going for 12 years now, including this year. So Hooptober is basically there's a list of criteria, and your goal is to choose a list of 31 movies that match the criteria. These are things like choose 4 movies with zombies in it, choose 2 movies in the post-apocalypse, and there tend to be other like stipulations of like make sure you visit at least 6 countries in your list, that kind of thing, which I think is really interesting. So I made my list. I tend to make my list with my partner. Did you check it twice? We did. So this is really kind of dictated what I'm going to be watching basically for the next like month and a half. In theory, Hooptober is, though the list criteria drops in like, I think it dropped like late August this year, you're not supposed to start it until at least halfway through September. But I've had a little bit of a Hooptember in starting the list just because I know that my October is probably going to be a little bit busier. So we've already watched like I think 7 of these 31. And looking through that list, we seem to have chosen, I mean, there are a couple standouts. There are a couple really great ones we've picked, but 3 of the ones we've watched are, there is a movie I've never heard of that is a 1971 film, technically, that was actually filmed in like 1962. It was like a zombie movie called I Eat Your Skin that was filmed in the early 60s. And it was so bad that they decided to shelve it. They decided not to release it. And then like a decade later, they were like, well, we might as well. So you have this movie that is like a pre-Romero Zombies depiction of zombies, being that the movie was made before Romero Zombies. But then it's being released like a decade after Romero Zombies. So it's just like weirdly behind itself in a way that is also just extremely uneventful. I think it's a very like low budget movie. It was just like this movie has been in my household a bizarre meme because for some reason Arthur, whenever he looks at like our Plex server that has I like got this movie from the library because it was like in a big collection of old zombie movies and I wanted some other movies on it. Whenever he sees the poster for this movie, he turns to me and says, I eat your skin. Like he does like this weird gremlin voice, and I don't know why he does it, and it's definitely like some kind of vocal stim. But that has hyped up the movie in a way that it could never meet that hype. So terrible film. There is no eating of skin in the entire movie, so that is bizarre. Now, if you are looking for trash and having a good time with this horror trash, may I recommend one of the post-apocalyptic movies that I watched as part of this challenge, Rat's Night of Terror. is a post-apocalypse in which a biker gang basically stumbles upon a series of I don't know, rat misadventures. I don't know how to describe it other than like it's like if Mad Max was about rats. If the primary antagonist was rats.
I thought you were going to go in a direction of biker gangs meet Ratatouille.
That could have been interesting. The rats don't really like have that kind of personality. They are pretty cute often. I was kind of worried as I was watching it that like, did they accidentally, because like I think anytime you film with animals like rats that are kind of like a big, you need a lot of them. It's like, oh well, now like a couple 100 rats probably ran off the set and now they have like disrupted the natural environment of the film. I am assuming that didn't happen while filming this, and I'm mainly assuming that so I can continue liking it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a good time. It's very silly. It has the kind of thing where like the kind of whimsical post-apocalypse where every character is dressed completely differely. Like you have one guy who's like dressed like he's like a Napoleonic kind of general. You have other people who are like dressed in all leather, like they're in like an 80s metal band. You have like every character is something interesting but different. Arthur was theorizing that they didn't actually hire anyone to do costume design. They just said, everyone, hey, make your own OC, bring it to the set, and we'll see what happens. And that's kind of the vibe it has, even if maybe there is a very talented costume designer who actually did that. I love the feeling that everyone kind of brought their own like OC to this D&D match that is this movie. So yeah,
that's how I like to imagine the takeout orders in Sean Baker's Takeout, that they just kind of put out a call for extras and background people in this film, and we're like, hey, you will get a succulent Chinese meal out of this. You just have to tell us what your order is and be okay with us filming at least the front part of your apartment and maybe your door or something.
And the interesting thing that I see there, which I guess maybe in my own theorizing about this costume we would also see, is like there is this kind of social desirability bias that might come out of that I'm really interested in. Like, did people change their order if they knew that they were going to be filmed?
Oh, for like the clout.
For the yeah, exactly. Like.
Get in the crab rangoon for the clout.
If I'm ordering, like takeout in a movie, it's like, I'm not getting my normal General Tso's tofu. Like,
why?
No,
Are you ashamed of the General Tso's tofu?
And maybe I don't think I am.
Do you think it's basic?
I think it's basic. Maybe is what it feels like. I think I'm ordering like dry hot chicken or something like that. Something that's like. Feels
to more, let people know.
Yeah, because I like get it, That's how I would be if I was in Sean Baker's Takeout. Other movies I watched this week, just quickly. I watched Piranha 2, which is bizarre. It's directed by James Cameron for some reason. It was James Cameron's like first feature film. It feels like the kind of movie that the guy who made Titanic would make, in that a lot of it is underwater. The first 5 minutes, there's an underwater scuba sex scene. So that's basically what like half of James Cameron's career was, I guess, is bring back the scuba sex scenes in Avatar 3, many are saying. I watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. This actually wasn't a part of the challenge. It was just like a friend decided that we should watch this. Really fun, honestly. A lot of that movie is very fun. I know that you're a big fan of, was it Lily James of Cinderella live action remake fame, so you might really vibe with Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, as she is the lead. It takes a very bizarre turn that I find that like the movies sometimes attempt to take their mythical creatures and apply some kind of like social justice metaphor to them. So I think of like, for example, on the Disney Channel original movies, Zombies, spelled out Zombies, because they're cheerleaders in those movies. That is like a movie about like civil rights and eventually like assimilationism versus liberation. Like they use the metaphor of like half of society is zombies as like a way of trying to say something about essentially racism. And well, I mean, it gets more complex as it goes, but it's, you know, it's an easily read metaphor.
Sure.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies maybe accidentally does this. The zombies partway through is revealed that like some of the zombies haven't kind of gone full zombie. They like, because they haven't yet consumed like human brains, they sort of haven't consummated their zombiness, and because of that, by only sustaining themselves on pig brains, they're able to like continue being like thoughtful people.
Oh, it's like the Twilight vampire feeding on animals instead.
Yeah. It is definitely like, it's like analogous to that, but then also has this added thing that Twilight kind of doesn't, where like if they eat one human brain, they will be broken forever and just be like the cartoon zombie. So like the thing, and this is okay, spoilers for,
is this just like a metaphor for virginity?
That's kind of what it feels like Twilight is to me. But these things are all messy, clearly. I mean, Twilight being like written by like a devout Mormon woman probably means that, yeah. But specifically, Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, I think, is less careful, to the point that like by the end of the movie, and spoilers for Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, the hit 2016 film that many people might be waiting to watch, I'm sure.
Eagerly awaiting.
The Mr. Darcy in that movie, who is also bizarre Mr. Darcy. As far as Mr. Darcy's go, he's like the dweebiest I've ever seen. He like reminds me of like the Chosen from Smosh. Anyway, like he does like this weird plot to disrupt the vegan zombies. He like basically secretly has them eat human brains that he steals from soldiers, like dead soldiers in a war, so that he can like disrupt this attempt of negotiation between the zombies and the crown. And it's like, you are racist, I think. Like that's the thing I wrote in my Letterboxd review is, this movie feels like it has like a love interest that could only come out of apartheid South Africa. Like,
oh my god.
That's like the feeling I had, is like this feels like I don't know. That maybe makes me think like they didn't intend this like civil rights metaphor that's so visible, like it's like just obviously there. But yeah, so it really doesn't stick the landing on that. It did have me thinking about like other kind of civil rights or social justice metaphors that maybe flop, that I'm sure we will see in the future. So yeah, that was a rougher one. And then the last one I'll mention that I watched recently, this one was for my Hooptober. I watched Tales from the Hood, which was a like this, what's it called? An anthology horror movie. So it's like, a bunch of kind of short films that make up the full movie, modeled very clearly on Tales from the Crypt. And I was so impressed by this movie. I love Tales from the Hood. I say I was like surprised mainly because I watched Tales from the Crypt, the thing that it's kind of based on roughly, and like I thought Tales from the Crypt was kind of a little bit garbo. I know that like Creepshow also has kind of a reputation as being not very great. Like I think like largely most horror anthologies I've seen, maybe outside of Trick or Treat, which I do love Trick or Treat. Most of these other horror anthologies like tend to be kind of bad. And then I came to Tales from the Hood, a movie that several people I know like gave very like middling to low reviews, and I'm just like, oh, like this is like, they're very on the nose, but these are like a series of short films like about like serious political topics. Like the first of these short films is like a horror movie about police brutality. Like it is like about like a precinct of cops who like murder a like literal civil rights leader. And then this like black cop who is like wanting to be like this well-intentioned sort of ally to the cause, who like ultimately kind of can't be that. And like I was like, wow, this is like really, really thoughtful and also just extremely fun. Like it's also just a really fun like series of horror movies. There's like another one about like a haunted doll that's like haunting essentially like a David Duke kind of character, like a former KKK guy who is trying to run for office, in this case running for governor, and like him being haunted by a doll. So like I won't spoil, I guess, what all of the rest of the stories in Tales from the Hood are about, but like, oh man, I was so impressed by that movie. Would really, really recommend it. And yeah, that's about it. Oh, I did watch Caught Stealing, which was good. Aronofsky,
okay.
he's something. Yeah, but like I said, if I keep talking about what I've been watching, I'll be here forever. What have you been watching lately, Kim?
So I have been nerfed a little bit in my ease of access to watching things, because for a very long time I had, when honestly it probably should have expired, but I had the Hulu Spotify bundle from college, despite no longer being a student for a while now. And that just continued to fly under the radar for a while until I go to log into Hulu and all of a sudden it says, oop, you've got to log into Disney Plus now. And so I no longer have a Hulu account. But that being said, I did watch Guillermo del Toro's Kronos.
Ooh,
which was a fun one. Yeah, I think it was his first directorial, I guess his directorial debut. You only have one of them.
Yeah.
But it was very fun. The prosthetics were very goofy and enjoyable. It felt a bit more simple, I suppose, in its themes than some of his later works, but yeah, still a very fun film. And it has inspired a new Letterboxd list for me called Life-Changing Antique Stores. And so far I have this and Whisper of the Heart. So if you have any other recommendations for this Letterboxd list.
I think, and this... So I am thinking of two, which I think are kind of similar to each other in both like pulling from or maybe satirizing some pretty horrible Orientalism. I think Gremlins might be this.
What?
Yeah. Like at the beginning of Gremlins, they like buy Gizmo from some kind of like antique, like. I don't remember what the premise of that shop is exactly, but it is something like that. And I could say similarly, like the thing that I think falls in the same kind of genre is maybe Little Shop of Horrors, which is not an antique shop. It's like an exotic plant shop or something.
Yeah.
But has similar vibes to that. So that's the only things I can think of. But I'd appreciate any other suggestions people may have. Write in at conflictkino@gmail.com for additions to the list, or I guess just comment on your Letterboxd list.
Yeah. So looking to expand that list, but then otherwise, way back, shortly after my last breakup, I attempted to watch Scenes from a Marriage, the newer version on HBO, and I got through the first episode of it and realized that this is a horrible thing for me to be watching immediately after a breakup, and I stopped watching. And so I tried to go back to it in the last week, and I watched one more episode, and I think I'm just gonna go track down the Ingmar Bergman one. Yeah, the newer one's just not quite doing it for me.
Is that like Oscar Isaac? Was that?
It is Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. I really want to.
That is a great pair. Oof.
It is such a great pair, but yeah, so I guess spoilers for Scenes from a Marriage, but Jessica
Just the new
Chastain's
one.
character. I suppose. I mean,
I have no idea if they are similar enough that you can spoil one and it'll spoil the other. But continue.
they are broadly similar, although one of the major things that is changed is that in the original one, in Bergman's, the husband cheats on the wife, I think with like a sort of like off-screen character, like we just never
Sure.
really find out who it is. Whereas in the Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac one, at least so far, I don't know if this guy shows up later, but at least so far, it's still an off-screen character, but it's Jessica Chastain's character who cheats this time around. But the off-screen character, apparently we find out more about him in the newer version than in Bergman's version, because in the newer version we find out that this guy is a businessman from Tel Aviv.
Interesting. And
Yes.
we will not unpack that.
No.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Bergman's version. I mean, like I have that Criterion Bergman box set.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, but I still haven't watched Scenes from a Marriage. I actually did watch. I watched like, was it Summer with Monica like last week? So I've been inching my way through that collection for like years now. But the only Scenes from a Marriage content I have consumed is I have seen Before Midnight, which I know is very much quietly a sort of remake of Scenes from a Marriage. Or at least heavily alludes to each other, at least in one of its major scenes. But
Okay.
which love that movie. But
I do love Before Midnight, which is actually the movie that I went and watched after I decided to not watch the newer version of Scenes from a Marriage after my last breakup.
rough movie to choose in that
Well, I
sort
mean,
of situation.
I met that guy right after I watched Before Sunset at the Film Center here in Philly, and I'd just gotten out of the theater, and it was a very pleasant afternoon, so I went and sat in the park and just was journaling for a bit, and that was when he came up to me and struck up a conversation. And, you know, of all moments, I think, to take a chance on a stranger in a little meet cute,
Yeah,
it felt like the right time.
Yeah, which yeah. Well, shout out to Love, everybody. We
Shout out
endorse-
to Love.
We endorse Love here on Conflict.
Shout out
Kino.
to Richard Linklater.
Shout out to Richard Linklater. Anything else you watched this week you want to talk about?
Nothing more on my end. Well, I guess I rewatched the film that we're going to be talking about.
Sure. Yeah. So let's get into that. Tell us about Alex Cox's Walker.
Let me say to those who invoke the memory of Vietnam.
It's the mid-1850s, and William Walker, an American lawyer and doctor, wants to manifest his destiny by claiming his own territory south of the U.S. border. After a failed attempt in Sonora, Mexico, he receives an invitation from the Liberal Party of Nicaragua to help unseat the conservative government in Grenada. He blunders his way from the coast to the capital, where he and a group of several dozen men overthrow the government, establishing a puppet regime that brings thousands of U.S. settlers to Nicaragua. Walker then executes his puppet and consolidates his power, leading Nicaraguans to form a coalition with other Central American nations to overthrow him. As the revolt comes to its head, he orders his men to burn Grenada, and amid the flames, a helicopter lands in the town square with orders from the U.S. State Department to extract all American citizens. Walker, who identifies himself as the president of Nicaragua, is left behind, and 3 years later is shown being executed by Honduran soldiers. The credits roll beneath a CRT TV playing news footage of Ronald Reagan denying interest in sending troops to Latin America, followed by footage of U.S. military exercises along the Nicaragua-Honduras border, and people cleaning the bodies of people killed by the Contras, a right-wing militia that Reagan and his administration illegally funded. So, Pat?
Oh,
Thoughts on Walker?
That was for how much happens in this movie. That was a very beautifully concise summary. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I spent a disgustingly long amount of time trying to whittle that down.
Sure.
The original summary of it was so much longer.
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, the thing that's... I like that your summary kind of... in some ways jumped over the anachronisms thing, which I think we'll get to.
Well, I wanted to bring that up in the points being made section.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess so thinking about Walker, which, you know, a movie that I think this is the third time I've seen it. It's a movie that a lot of folks in my union were basically telling each other about for years. There was
hell yeah.
My good friend Allison, who is a person I share a tattoo with, actually. She had been like telling me about this movie Walker for a long while, as like this movie that is both, like, you know, extremely radical in its politics and seemingly, she thought, specifically along the lines of like my kind of politics, and in addition to that, like, also just like this bonkers anachronism filled thing, this like, the big selling point that she had for the movie is like, and then randomly in this movie set in the 1850s, they're reading Newsweek, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. I'm curious what exactly that would mean. So eventually, because Criterion eventually, I mean, they had, you know, this has been in the Criterion collection for a while, but its DVD,
I think since 2007.
Yeah,
or so?
its DVD has been out of print for a good long while until like 2022. They did like another kind of restoration, and they put out a Blu-ray, which thankfully I now have, and I finally got to see it then after that Criterion Blu-ray release, and oh man, exciting as heck movie.
Yes.
I also like love Alex Cox movies. Like, I've just like kind of followed him through both his like pre this movie and post this movie movies, which this movie was a turning point in his career.
Yes, and we will get to that later.
Yes, absolutely. But like, I mean, like, Repo Man I actually don't like, but that is like the movie that is kind of held up as like his masterpiece. The Walker is his favorite movie of his own, which is I think an interesting fact. But like Sid and Nancy was the other movie of his that I became somewhat obsessed with. I love what that movie does. And more recently, you know, though I also watched like his, I think, first post Walker movie was Highway Patrolman, which is a Mexican film. Like that I thought was also like extremely fascinating. It's clear that like post Walker, he's engaging with filmmaking very differently. So I kind of stopped. I don't know. I enjoy his movies after Walker, but he's not really making as many of the kind of movies I really like to watch, I guess. Just because he couldn't afford to, I guess.
Yeah.
But much more recently, and like I think we'll come back to this in a little bit, but he was an actor in Phil Tippett's Mad God, which Phil Tippett's Mad God, this like stop motion masterpiece that has a variety of like real world footage just kind of spliced in, and in some of these like live action segments he plays like this kind of bizarre sort of commander of these reconnaissance soldiers. He plays a very strange figure, and when I saw that movie, I was just like, I know Alex Cox is only listed as an actor here, but his fingerprints are all over this. Like, maybe not in animation, obviously, because, like, you know, nobody thinks of Alex Cox as, like, an animator in the way that, like, Phil Tippett, obviously, that's his mastery of that movie is in the animation. But, like, the politics of Mad God, the, like, reverence specifically for Dante's Inferno, a work that I think is incredibly important to Alex Cox for some reasons we'll maybe get to later. Like, I see that movie as an Alex Cox movie.
Okay.
And so I've been like, up to this day, still like fascinated by this guy. What's your history with Walker?
This is my second time watching it. The first time that I watched it was on the Criterion Blu-ray that you just mentioned when you lent it to me. And then I biked it back to your apartment and almost got hit by a car.
Well, that'll happen. Cycling in Pittsburgh is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, but this is my second watch, and I think I enjoyed it more this time. I think in part because the first time that I watched it, I didn't know what I was getting into other than you told me that you thought I would like it. And
was I right, or
you were right. Cool. I think I gave it like 4.5 stars the first time. I think I'd give it a solid 5 now though, because I think the like half-star knockoff the first time around was mostly just me trying to get my bearings.
Sure.
As the movie kind of got through the first act into the second.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, okay, so Walker is like a shocking movie for like a dozen reasons, I feel like.
Yes.
I mean, like there's this bizarre stylistic thing of the fact that it is
well, it's a true story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a true story, but then it's told in a way that no historical like film is ever shot, which is it has 2 overlapping timelines essentially, one taking a back seat for the most part until the last couple minutes.
Well, I mean, at the very start of the film, it does specify that this is a true story, and that is something that I kind of love about it. Yeah, just pairing that with the anachronisms and also just the utter absurdity at every turn. Like any moment that there is a whiff of self-seriousness, particularly from Ed Harris's Walker, which Ed Harris does an incredible job in this film. But every time we get like that little whiff of self-seriousness from him, it is immediately undercut by either an absurdity through anachronism, an absurdity through the actions of the people around him. It's so good, and especially paired with the way that he's just always wearing that overly formal black suit, which is based on a historical photo of William Walker. I think maybe like one of the only ones like confirmed of him. And yeah, like I love that juxtaposition and that just utter goofiness about it.
Yeah, I mean, like his hat is so much of that, I feel like.
Yes.
Like the
well, I mean, Cornelius Vanderbilt's character, or like Cornelius Vanderbilt, like literally says, "We got to give him a different hat."
Yeah, like.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. So my first point I was gonna bring up is like I am like fascinated by like the central conflict of the film that I feel is like the emotional conflict of Walker as a character, and a reason to make Walker your protagonist is that he is a true believer. Like he is, though around him the people kind of technically steering the ship, that being really the Vanderbilts in this case, like they are not like believers in the BS that is being kind of peddled around. They aren't like religiously devoted to manifest destiny, let's say, in the way that Walker is. Instead, like, you know, they have these more cynical kind of ideas that I think are pretty visible of just like they want money, like they want resources. Like they are not here because they think God has promised them these things. But Walker, like from the very first scene, like our introduction to Walker is that he lost this battle and an act of God saves him. It is like a windstorm that saves him and allows him to return to the United States and not like die or become a prisoner of war or whatever.
Although, did you also hear this? And I don't know if this was me just on second watch knowing how the movie ends, reading too much into it, but did you hear like a helicopter sound?
You know, not that I can remember, but that doesn't sound impossible to me. I mean, that seems like the kind of shenanigans that Cox might pull.
Okay, because I thought when I was rewatching it, I was like, Am I hearing a helicopter? Did I forget when the helicopter shows up or something?
Yeah, and like, a helicopter would push up a bunch of dust, kind of look like what we see in the film. So that's not impossible. But yeah, so like from then though, like he is returning to the United States and making this big argument to this court that like in another movie he would be a swindler. Like he would be like a guy who was making a like poor faith argument. Like I should say another movie that is critical of this kind of like colonialism would like usually portray these kinds of characters like a Vanderbilt. They would be making arguments like this, but they would be lying through their teeth. And the thing that's like amazing about Walker this entire time is that he believes it. Like
he's a social democrat.
He's just like, and the thing is, when he says he's a social democrat later in the movie, I'm just like, I believe that you believe that, and I also believe you're stupid. But like, I believe that you believe that, and that's so, like,
he's so insanely earnest.
He's so insanely earnest, and like. So I was this time around I watched it actually with the director's commentary, so I got a little bit more of Alex Cox's perspective, which that Criterion Blu-ray also includes. That commentary is Alex Cox and the screenwriter of the film, who I regrettably forget the name of. But hearing them kind of bounce off of each other throughout the film was really interesting, and like Alex Cox let out this sentiment that I thought was really interesting, which is that guys like this are instrumental to the Imperial Project. That being that the Imperial Project requires not only the people kind of pulling the strings, who are the, people who are going to be lying, people who are going to be clearly doing things for these cynical reasons, but they are taking advantage of the fact that there are people who actually believe the lies that are being said.
Grifters need an audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that is like largely who this movie is about, weirdly. Is like it's not really about the grifter, it is about their audience.
This one audience member who just got wildly successful.
Yeah, and like it's so then we get to that first battle in Nicaragua.
In Rivas.
And he's just like walking through and like this gentleness that he has, and just being like, I am confident, I am not here to fight, I'm here to win because God is with me.
Yes, I do what I always do, I advance.
Yes, exactly. Which is like, to a point, a comedic bit, but like also is a portrayal of belief. But
I mean, that is Manifest Destiny made manifest.
Absolutely. Like, so, which I think like this true belief, like there is one other character who has it. And I think like he is the most subtle performance of the movie that is like also completely essential to telling this story about belief, that being Captain Hornsby. So Captain Hornsby, his kind of sort of second in command for most of the movie. Like he was there, I believe he's even there in the first scene in Mexico.
Yeah, he's the one who's shouting at the other men, like, hold the line, you know, for religious conviction, for all these things.
Like, yes. He is this other person who believes these things for religious conviction, and also, like, very specifically, he is fighting for abolition. The reason that he wants to go to Nicaragua, though this is somewhat implied, like, he doesn't say many of his beliefs, I guess.
Yeah.
Clearly he is there because Nicaragua is to be, in a time, as slavery is still around the United States, going to be a free state for everyone. And then when ultimately, Walker reverses that promise and then becomes like this person who is trying to bring slavery to Nicaragua, like, he stays. He is like the one person of the abolitionists who sticks around, and there's,
even though he is the most vocal in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about like why it was that he stayed is so tragic and painful, and like there's one scene that makes this very explicit, and it's a scene that the writers did not write any original dialogue for. It is entirely Walker reads an entry from his actual diary to Hornsby Then Hornsby grabs the diary, flips to an earlier page, and reads another entry from that same diary. And these are actual words of Walker. And like this later entry is of course like, you know, his sort of proclamation of making Nicaragua a slave state. But then earlier there's this kind of like religious conviction in the need for freedom. And it's like Hornsby is staying there, if anything, to like, I can't tell if it's like hope that he can wake this man up. I can't tell if he just like feels he has nowhere to go. But his presence there reveals so much in the film. It's like, I think it's complicated because he's also like a real historical figure, I think. So like Hornsby actually is a person who actually was there and did stay. But like as a narrative choice, it's clearly doing this revealing. So that was my first point.
Yeah, I also loved that moment, especially when the other abolitionists, black abolitionists, are leaving, and there's one guy who just looks at Hornsby like, and I think it's even raining to add, you know, extra melodrama to the scene. And yeah, that was gutting. I mean, personally, also just like as someone who has unfortunately stayed in very bad relationships for far too long, like I really felt for him in that moment.
Oh my god. Speaking of bad relationships, like there is like an underlying homoeroticism to his movement.
Wait,
like
that was actually one of my points, is that we all agree that the neck handkerchief adjustment scene before the Battle of Rivas, like that was gay, right?
Yes.
We're all in agreement, right? Okay, good.
Yeah. Like, oh my god, yeah, that's one of my minor notes. And I was, you know, listening to the director's commentary. That is explicit in their minds as well. Like, that is a thorough intent, which is really interesting. Like, I feel a little weird about that sometimes. Like, I think sometimes whenever you insert homoeroticism into what are essentially like fascist power structures, I'm like, you know, this could have a bad effect. I don't think they intend it in that hateful way.
No. Also, like, I'm sure this will not be the only film where we might talk about some homoerotic fascists.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have made, if a major part of my online career is talking about homoeroticism among fascists. Shout out to my video essay on Sallow, everybody. Yeah. Anyway, moving on to what's your next point, Kim?
Well, one of my major points was just the homoeroticism in itself, but also the score of this film is so good. I've just been listening to it nonstop since watching it, and like the whole time that I was working on writing up the movie summary and looking into the historical context. Joe Strummer, lead vocalist of the punk rock band The Clash,
who's in the movie as well.
Absolute.
He has a cameo in the movie. I think it's very brief, but if you remember that scene where the soldiers are marching through Nicaragua and there's like an attempted series of sexual assaults among like these women who are doing laundry. He is one of those soldiers. That is the composer of the film.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, like
But no, Joe Strummer cooked for this.
Absolutely. Like I think it's so, and to a point, like, I think this extends to a lot of the other kind of artists working on the film, but the way that Alex Cox has, like, connected his own really political networks to, like, the great artists who care about those things that he cares about. Like, it's clearly, like, he became very connected in the punk scene, primarily through, like, his early works like Repo Man, but then, like, you know, it allowed him to do things like Sid and Nancy, like, it ended up, you know, he was connected to these kinds of people, both who are just into punk music or also are into, like, opposing authoritarianism.
Yes.
In a way that, like, that score is so kind of out of left field in some ways. Like, you don't expect, you know, a punk vocalist to make this score necessarily, but...
Yeah, like, when I realized that it was Joe Strummer, I was like, wait, like, Joe Strummer is in, like, the Joe Strummer? And, yeah... But I did, this time also especially, I really loved the leitmotif return in The Burning of Granada with Walker's younger brother. Also with like the visual parallel of him now also wearing this overly self-serious black suit and just marching, but this time getting mowed down.
Absolutely, yeah. The god not being on his side in some ways.
Yes.
Which I think, like, oh man, yeah. There's so much going on, and maybe something to read into how that leitmotif works in terms of paralleling the belief systems of these characters. So I think it's probably time we talk a little bit about the anachronisms.
Yes.
And like sort of how and why they work. Yeah.
They were very unpopular.
Yes.
At the time that the film came out.
They were highly hated. And I think that there's, I know at least, Alex Cox's reasoning for it, which I mostly agree with. It is, I think, the main reason that people like, known enemy of this podcast, I guess, Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert hated this movie very much.
Yes, we'll be talking about that more a bit later.
Yeah, and like I viewed that as primarily focusing around these anachronisms, which are like central to the movie's comedy and just like how it chooses to tell the story. So, I believe it's a half hour in we get our first anachronism, which is, technically we might get an anachronism earlier in that Marlee Matlin is doing American Sign Language, which did not exist yet. Other sign languages did exist, but that's not the one that she knows. So that is technically an anachronism. But the first
There's also a very, very brief one. Vanderbilt's newspaper is dated incorrectly.
Ooh, that's a catch. That's a catch right there. And maybe there's a helicopter in the first scene, as we said.
Maybe.
maybe. But it's minute 37 is when
timestamps and everything.
At that first I was watching it, waiting for I was like looking at the bar. I was like, when does this happen? And the first major one is minute 37, which is the Zippo lighter is brought out. It's during that battle, and that first battle. What is that battle?
Rivas?
Yes, Battle of Rivas.
Yes.
The Zippo lighter is brought out and used to light something, which is, all things considered, a somewhat like low-key anachronism, unless you're familiar with Zippo lighters. I think like people, especially seeing it now, like 40 years after the movie was made, there are probably some people, a lot of Gen Z might not think anything of it. They might just assume that Zippo lighters have existed far into the past. But it's clearly just a minor anachronism that is very deliberate and right in the center of the scene. And apparently, the thing I learned is that people walked out of the screenings when that happened. When that happened, there was a first burst of people walking out of the film when it premiered. Which I found incredibly interesting. But so, yeah, there are anachronisms like that. There is later in the film, the like Newsweek and Time magazine start popping up. I think it's like around 1 hour, at the 1 hour timestamp that we get.
The Marlboros and the Coke.
Newsweek. A Mercedes drives by. Which is
the Time magazine cover.
Yes, which apparently the Mercedes driving by is actually like an in-joke for Nicaraguans, because apparently like some major figure of the Contras was like in bed with Mercedes.
Really?
So yeah, which is like apparently that got the biggest laugh among Nicaraguan audiences. So that's a thing I learned from the director's commentary. So like ultimately the clear thing that these anachronisms are doing is they are overlapping two periods of history. Like they are attempting to say that what's going on in the 1850s and what's going on in the 1980s are two of the same thing, in terms of how the United States is engaging with Nicaragua specifically. That being this conflict of Walker and how Ronald Reagan is using the Contras in Nicaragua, which becomes very explicit then when we get to the credits, when we get to the helicopter coming in itself, kind of. I mean, that helicopter basically parodying like the fall of Saigon. Like there's a lot of this kind of assumption of where this would maybe go. And this is I think like, so the thing that I feel when I see that is I feel that Alex Cox sees like the system of an empire as cyclic. Like there is an inevitability to anything that is going, like the actions of this empire, specifically in Latin America. That being, as long as the United States exists, as long as the United States is an empire, this is what they will do to Nicaragua. There is no alternate world. This has happened now twice and will happen again. And this is to a point
more than twice.
Yeah, beyond. I mean, the fact that they are pulling from other conflicts. I mean, that extraction at the end is like very very clearly pulling from scenes of the the fall of Saigon, like, and which is, I know, the intention of Alex Cox, is like giving this image of power is made of systems. Systems have their goals and incentive structures. All of the details beyond that are incidental.
Yes. And also these systems are designed to protect and maintain and perpetuate themselves.
Absolutely. Which, like, I know that, like, Alex Cox, I don't know, I guess reads a lot of similar books to me. In that I was thinking, like, as I was watching this quote from Malatesta, which was, I was trying to find the quote in, like, my big, like, Malatesta volume, and it turns out it's not in this one. It's in his book Anarchism, where he talks about basically police. Metaphorically, he kind of calls them wolf hunters. That being, the wolf hunter will never exterminate the wolves. They will always leave some wolves, because that will allow them to continue having a job as wolf hunters. And in the same way, police, need crime, and that without crime they are not police. And in the lack of crime, they will create crime through a variety of means. And in the same way, empires will do this. They will do exactly what is happening here. So there's this kind of, like, historical materialism thing to that. There's this kind of thing that is framed, I think, not just as like systems have their outcomes, but these outcomes are inevitable, are always happening, and will always happen. Which becomes even more explicit, actually, in Mad God, which is why I keep thinking about that. That's where it's sort of revealed that, like, the end of that to Alex Cox is, like, we will continue doing that until the world ends, and then we will do it again.
I do think there is another layer to the anachronisms, at least in how I'm sort of reading the film, that is kind of an extension of the absurdity and the goofiness that we see just throughout all of it, and that sort of serving to highlight that so much of the way that we think about empire, so much of the way that we're taught to think about them, is through empire's propaganda, and is, obviously in a very self-serving lens to portray empires as these, like, serious, monolithic leviathans. And so, like, undercutting that with just this absurdity and this, honestly, at many times, just, like, incompetence on the part of Walker and a lot of his men. Like, I also think that those anachronisms are an extension of that juxtaposition.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, one of the things, like, that goofiness and the role that goofiness plays, which I completely agree with you, that, like, that is what the goofiness is there for in many ways. Like, it is very challenging to people in a way that, like, I know some of the reaction to this film was people arguing that, like, that history is meant to be taken seriously, that they could be potentially making light of these events by having this, like, overarching layer of comedy. And, like, what I think it instead does is, like, it forces us to not sit comfortably in treating this as something happening in the past.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Alex Cox has talked about, like, a lot of films that, cover conflict, cover wars, and particularly wars in the past, are told through the eyes of, like, a journalist or a reporter or, like, some imaginary impartial source, which, you know, in itself, that is an utter fiction when it comes to how journalism works. But also, like you said, it allows the viewer to think that they are somehow not a part of this.
Yeah. And like, so I've been thinking a lot about certain things that I heard him say in the director's commentary, which itself was an overlapping of two time periods. That being, and like anytime a director is looking back at their work and talking about it, they're going to be thinking about their work in the time that it was made and in the time that they are now watching it. Mm-hmm. And like, when he was talking about the film in the time that it was made, he talked a lot about Vietnam. Mm-hmm. That being like the cultural memory of Vietnam is the thing that allowed like Americans who were watching this movie and, you know, willing to engage with its comedy, it allowed them to like see that what happened in Vietnam and what is happening in Nicaragua are the same. And and the fact that they had already had this consciousness about American empire in Vietnam allowed them to essentially like gave them the power to attempt to stop what was happening in Nicaragua. America did not want another Vietnam. And that allowed them this. And the thing that he said, which was like the most painful thing I think he said in this director's commentary, is that a generation later, we have lost that, and now we're doing it again in Iraq. Because he was watching this from the 2000s, you know, around the time that they put out that, you know, 2007, the DVD of it. And he was like, and what we're doing in Iraq, you know, Bush's invasion of Iraq is so clearly doing this again. Many of the same things that Walker says in this film about bringing democracy, the fact there will be a democracy to elect democratically elected leaders within 6 months is said in this movie. The exact same lie said about Iraq, the same lie said constantly by American leaders about whatever it is that they are invading. And like, it is so just transparent and so visible. And the fact that that is something that like we as kind of, I don't know, people who see that have to constantly reproduce among ourselves. That being like the working class, if we want to challenge the people who are in power to do these things, we essentially in cycle have to make sure we remind ourselves that this continues to be true. Because if we don't, the next generation will allow it to happen. It's just so painful hearing him say that in that movie. Which, yeah, I mean, like, even then, like, whenever I got to the end of the movie, you know, me watching it from my own context of now, it's like, when I saw that helicopter come in and people are evacuating, I'm just like, oh, you mean like what just happened in Afghanistan? Like, this is exactly that. Like, this is exactly, you know, Afghanistan under the Biden administration. This is, and it's so, like I said, cyclic, but inevitable is the thing that's so painful about it.
Just to wrap up that thread, that is also what I think is so important about explicitly calling this a true story at the start of the film, is that, yeah, like you need the anachronisms, you need the goofiness, you need the, like, in your face, yeah, obviously this isn't fucking true, like, true to history, in order to see that, yeah, this is the truest way to tell the story of imperialism. Sorry, oh my god.
You choked in the hair while saying something very true.
Yeah, sorry, there we go.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, this is the truest way to tell the story of imperialism.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I appreciated so much more about the film this time watching.
Absolutely. I mean, like, it's... Yeah, it's wild that, like, at the time, this would be, like, so many people would react to this by almost saying, like, you have trashed history. Like, you've destroyed, like, this apparently...
something sacred.
History. When the thing that he's doing by trashing it is making it forever. Like, he is extending this in a way that's very beautiful. Okay, so I have a couple lighter notes.
Okay.
Which maybe, we just talked about some very heavy things, and I'm sure we will talk about some heavy things again in a little bit. But some other things that I learned, either, watching this movie for a third time now, hearing the director's commentary, all that. It turns out that Walker, in real life, the real life Walker, was a very short man.
Yes, almost every review that I read mentioned that Ed Harris is taller than the real life Walker.
Yes, and significantly, to the point that actually when they filmed the movie, anytime they had him talking to another character, Alex Cox would have the other actor stand on a box or sit Ed Harris in a hole. They dug holes for Ed Harris to stand in this movie. That's so awesome. So that's I love the attention to detail of that. Mm-hmm. This is a true story. Don't let anyone tell you anything different.
Oh, one other thing. If we're gonna be talking about stuff about real life Walker, I didn't realize he was from a journalism family. That's why he wanted to start a newspaper.
Okay.
He's a journalism nepo baby.
Oh my god. Yeah, if only this is a pre-Newsies world, I guess. So Newsies giving it the other illustration of where a nepo baby can go. Oh man. So I was looking around the cast of this movie. This is a very bizarre cast of actors. And a lot of that's because one, it was seen as a very risky and political statement to be a part of this movie. You are, and this is something we haven't, I guess, acknowledged yet. This is a film that is made with an almost entirely Nicaraguan crew.
Mexican and Nicaraguan,
yeah. Though made primarily by the director is, a British American. It is as a project, the goal was to take studio funds and give it to leftists in Nicaragua. That is very explicitly the material goal of this production. Which means the cast is a very bizarre mix of people, because it's there are Americans in the cast who just are clearly very left wing. I mean, this movie made me feel much more positively about Ed Harris.
Yes.
Which there are a couple other projects like that. He's arguably playing the same character in Snowpiercer. At least I see a lot of that same true believer, terrible colonizer happening in Snowpiercer. The second build actor, Richard Mosser, he a couple years later became the president of the Screen Actors Guild. So this is very clearly very left wing figure.
Yeah.
Very very impassioned in some ways. He became a very powerful and very thoughtful guy. So that was really interesting to see scrolling around. There was there's one speech that was given by a character,
the Sandinista.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So there's an actor who is actually a Sandinista who has never acted before, who came onto set wanting to play a role and wrote his own speech.
Yeah.
Which the director and writer were hyped about, because he was very impassioned. He was getting people hyped up. And the thing he chose to write, which I find so fascinating, is what is essentially, from his perspective of the hindsight of the 80s, the pro-Contra perspective.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. This a parallel tragedy to Walker's tragedy of true believers among the colonized. The idea that there are these people who do believe earnestly that the United States invading and establishing power is going to bring about some kind of order and prosperity, and then ultimately the clear tragedy of he believes that while he is bleeding out from the war that they just caused, he is clearly not benefiting. It's such an interesting choice. That actor also just for being literally not an actor, incredible performance.
Incredible job, yeah. No, when I was reading one of Alex Cox's interviews where he's talking about this, I was when I realized who he was talking about,
Yeah.
I fully thought like that like had to be someone with like some acting experience, but no.
Nope. Yeah.
Incredible,
Roberto,
incredible job.
His name is Roberto Espinoza. So shout out to,
Shout out.
the actual, revolutionary socialist who just showed up in a movie at one point, which is great. Let's see, other notes I have here. The film has one scene of using Shakespeare that I find super interesting. I think like staging Shakespeare in the global South is always a complex, interesting thing that's happening. It is used somewhat clunkily of the fact that they're performing Julius Caesar. Is like, whatever, on the nose, sure. But the fact that it is, this very culturally loaded thing is interesting to me. Yeah. Do you have any other small notes?
Nothing else on my end. Marley Martin's dress was gorgeous for the 4 minutes that she was wearing it.
Yeah, she is
in that scene.
She's kind of barely in the movie, but
she's got top billing for it.
Yeah, Marley Matlin with that, like, amazing,
Marley Matlin, thank you.
Amazing performance, and also like a part of it's true to I mean, Walker actually did have this partner who was I believe mute, I guess not deaf, who he did communicate with some form of sign language, who also had the politics that are depicted in the movie. She was this abolitionist. She was this like very progressive, from I guess our perspective, idealist that clearly like was also a kind of more cynical believer. That being, she was willing to be critical of the power around her. And their whole relationship is so fascinating. Which, I mean, speaks to the other primary relationship of the film, that being, Walker's relationship with his mistress late in the film, that ultimately takes kind of a like BDSM thing that is
like the little dommy mommy action
there is
going
a
on.
little bit of like, do Americans want a dommy mommy from Latin America? That's the question the film asks.
Alex Cox was so brave for asking that.
Alex Cox was so brave for that. No, but I mean, like, as a metaphor for how the colonizer interacts with the victims of colonization. Anyway, yeah, okay, so let's continue off of this.
Anyway, talking about colonization in Latin America.
Yeah.
I will say something that has been a little bit fascinating in talking to people about preparing for this podcast episode is that I've been telling people, I've been doing a lot of reading on U.S. imperialism in Nicaragua, and then they immediately turn it back around and say, oh, what have you been learning about U.S. intervention in Nicaragua?
Yeah, interesting. That word I know is loaded, although I don't know as much as you do. So tell me about it. Tell me about Nicaragua.
So we've got 2 timelines happening in this film. So I guess we'll start with the first and rewind a little bit. So Nicaragua won independence from Spain in 1824, which was a year after the Monroe Doctrine was first articulated in the United States. So the Monroe Doctrine basically opposed European colonialism in the Western Hemisphere. Not because it was opposed to colonialism, it's just that the US wanted to do its own colonialism
Classic.
in this hemisphere. Yeah.
That's ours,
and so, as empires are wont to do, but the US Marine Corps had been in Nicaragua since 1852 to, quote unquote, protect US economic interests. But
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure the US has never done that elsewhere or at any other point in history that we might ever bring up on this podcast, but who's to say? But going on at this time, in Nicaragua specifically, there was a lot of civil warring happening post-independence, and so this included the Liberal Democratic Party and the Legitimist Conservative Party. So this is the scene that Walker is walking into in Nicaragua. And Walker was one of many what was called filibusters. And so these days, when we hear the word filibuster, we usually just think of a congressperson standing and talking for a really long time to try to delay like forward motion on a bill in Congress. The most notable recently was Cory Booker's, which broke Strom Thurmond's record.
But Cory Booker's never invaded Nicaragua, is my understanding.
To my knowledge.
Okay, cool.
To my knowledge.
Sure.
But back then, filibusters were individual U.S. citizens who were inspired by Manifest Destiny and also often desired to set up their own little slave region to seize territory in Central and South America. And Walker was among many filibusters, but he was by far the most successful. And in addition to all of this, we have Cornelius Vanderbilt's economic interest in Nicaragua as well. So this is pre-Panama Canal being built. So there's not like a quick, easy, cheap way to get to and from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. So Nicaragua, thank you, Toaster. Toaster, my cat, is sitting right next to me, and he is screaming for what is essentially now third dinner.
He's taking notes, though, so that's good.
He is taking notes.
Yeah.
But Cornelius Vanderbilt, shipping and railroad tycoon, very much had an interest in having control in Nicaragua. And so that pathway there between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans was extremely lucrative for him. All right. So when Walker and many of the other filibusters were coming into Central and South America, they were technically in violation of the Neutrality Act of 1818, which made it illegal for citizens to wage war against countries that the U.S. was at peace with. This was largely kind of like a formality of a bill, just because this was already laid out in the U.S. Constitution. This just made it possible, or like this was like the thing that they can point to more specifically to say like you violated this. But that being said, despite all of these violations, which this is what at the beginning of Walker was on trial for his violation of this act. Clearly, this was not consistently or evenly enforced, and then also the U.S. was still happy to recognize the legitimacy of filibusters who succeeded, as Walker did.
Which is, I mean, in the film, like, that is, I think, pretty clearly implied to be the law is not enforced because some people are being paid off. I assume, maybe true to life. I mean, it is a true story of a film, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Obviously. This is a very, very true and serious story.
Yes.
But one of the things that was kind of wild in reading up about this is that at the end of the film, like I mentioned before, it jumps 3 years into the future to 1860, where Walker is getting executed by Honduran soldiers. Mm-hmm. And you might think, so I guess he was, captured in Grenada, and then it just like took a while to actually kill him. No. So Walker was actually handed over to the U.S. Navy, brought back to the U.S., and then he kept trying to go back to Central America.
Yeah, I knew this was one of the few places that they departed from history pretty dramatically.
Yeah.
But, and again, it's just like a consistent, like, he remains a true believer. Like, and that almost, like, if they would have portrayed that accurately in the film, it's like it would have been too unbelievable somehow more unbelievable than all of the other ridiculous things they do in the movie. Bonkers. So that's is that the start and end of kind of the American Nicaragua story of that era?
Of that era, yes. And then we continue moving forward into the late 1800s, early 1900s. And we've got liberal president of Nicaragua, Jose Santos Zelaya, refusing to grant the U.S. permission to build a canal through Nicaragua. And to add insult to injury to the U.S., he was instead reaching out to Japan and other powers to see if they had any interest. And so, weird timeline here, but after realizing that Zelaya was now courting these other countries to come build a canal in Nicaragua, oopsie, he gets overthrown by conservative rebels aided by the U.S. government in 1909.
You know, I gotta say, it's refreshing in like the many stories of American imperialism in other countries where American interests are disrupted and therefore there are suddenly coups. It's refreshing that oil isn't involved directly in this one.
Yeah, it's shocking, actually.
I think oil is still involved indirectly, considering maybe some of the product that they want to ship across this canal is oil. But it is refreshing, you know?
Yeah. And so afterwards, from 1913 till 1933, the U.S. occupied Nicaragua. And this was also in part because the then president, Adolfo Diaz, in 1919, won the presidency and called on the U.S. to help quash a liberal rebellion. And the U.S., started to extract ourselves from Nicaragua in 1933, in large part because of FDR's isolationist policies and the platform that he ran on. But that being said, when the U.S. entered World War II, Nicaragua also declared war on Japan, Germany, and Italy, and invited the U.S. to build naval and air bases in Nicaragua.
Did they do it?
Yeah, so Nicaragua actually had a huge economic boom from that happening.
And in a way, a lot of countries on our side who weren't actively being bombed seemed to get from World War II.
Yeah.
So that makes some sense. So how do we get to where we end up being in the 70s and 80s?
Right. So in 1936, the Somoza family comes to power in Nicaragua with the support of the U.S. And in turn, they also supported U.S. foreign policy. And by 1967, Anastasio Somoza Debayle became president and did a whole lot of corruption and human rights violations.
Oops.
Oopsie. But a lot of these human rights violations were against the rising opposition group, the Sandinista National Liberation Front, also shortened to FSLN, or the Sandinistas. And this is the group that we were talking about before, that the one crew member and actor is part of.
All right, so we've got this kind of oligarch family. We have the
leftist
rebels.
Who were themselves named after Augusto Cesar Sandino, who led Nicaraguan rebels against the U.S. During the occupation earlier in the century. Sandino was assassinated by the Nicaraguan National Guard, which had been trained by the U.S. military. And surely that will not be the only time that we will see Nicaraguan military forces being trained by the U.S. military. Surely. But funny that we should say that, because the Sandinistas were successful in overthrowing Somoza's regime. Although, interestingly enough, our friend Friend of the pod, Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Carter, he's coming back.
Coming back. He's around. He's doing stuff.
I didn't read up on a lot of this, but I did specifically read up on what Jimmy Carter did. So I am more informed about what you're about to say, I think, than what I am about the other things you've said. Let's go, Jimmy Carter.
Let's go, Jimmy Carter.
Jimmy Corner, new segment of the pod. What's Jimmy been up to on this one?
So Jimmy revoked aid to Somoza's regime due to the human rights abuses.
Good.
But which rare,
a W for
rare Jimmy Dub. Rare Jimmy Dub. Let's fucking go.
But yeah, in terms of foreign policy, let's say maybe rare Jimmy Dub. So I think when people are thinking about the Iran-Contra affair, when they hear about the Iran-Contra affair, they tend to associate this as being like a Ronald Reagan thing. And that's because, the primary thing, which Kim is going to talk about in a little bit, was absolutely a Reagan administration thing. The actual kind of military intervention that went on explicitly was, for the most part, like a Ronald Reagan thing. But much of this began under Jimmy Carter.
Yes.
That being, when it became clear that the new government in Nicaragua, which was primarily left-wing revolutionaries, that they were going to be in support of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was going to be kind of partnering with them. Jimmy Carter stopped playing nice. He definitely projected the image of playing nice, but at that point he did authorize the CIA to begin infiltrating Nicaragua through propaganda and other support for the counter-revolutionaries, ultimately laying the groundwork for the Iran-Contra affair. He absolutely is not an innocent party in this case, in that he is still, at that time, say 1979, he needs to play the game of the Cold War, and playing the game of the Cold War means the war is now happening in Nicaragua. He needs to attempt to, if he can't make Nicaragua an American ally, he is going to use the CIA to destabilize it. And that is ultimately the things he signed off on. Yes.
If Nicaragua will not be a U.S. ally, he will do everything in his power to make sure that it cannot be a viable ally to the USSR.
Yeah, and this is... I don't know, okay, so there was a little bit of a conflict in the VHS Village Discord server this week. Which was very playful, I'll say. But I mentioned in my review of Walker the question, should we be hating Jimmy Carter more than we do? Because I think that he has this image, especially, now recently him having passed, as being one of our kind of last good Democrat presidents. He is seen as this humble man. He's
just a peanut farmer.
Exactly.
And, he's building these habitats
you're
for
already
humanity.
mentioning the peanuts. That's that's what people do. And I've criticized Jimmy Carter even lightly, and I was responded to very playfully by
Jimmy Carter actually saved my life and helped the nurse who birthed me.
Sure. Yeah, he built the Habitat for Humanity. But someone said, imagine hating Jimmy Carter, and I'm I've lived it, bitch. I did not say that last part because I don't tend to use gendered insults. But
wow,
yeah,
a feminist.
I know, kind of. Can we take a moment to? No, but I think the thing that fundamentally that I have struggled to deal with over time is we often hold up the humanity of individual leaders of our country, or leaders around our country. But ultimately, especially if they're at the point that Jimmy Carter was, where he is the leader of the entire United States, that means that he is the leader of an imperial power. There is no way he can act that is beyond criticism. There was no kind of president Jimmy Carter could have been that would make me like him. And like that's ultimately, and like maybe that means you think that doesn't matter and we should just like Jimmy Carter anyway because that's a less miserable way to live. And maybe sure. But like ultimately to like Jimmy Carter and to not be critical of Jimmy Carter feels to me like, one, you should make an Iranian friend, because they'll tell you not to like Jimmy Carter, but like, two, it's an uncritical way of living, and I try to live critically, I guess. So yeah,
I think that's a good goal.
Jimmy Carter, I'm not mad at you if you don't hate Jimmy Carter, but I think we should maybe not hate Jimmy Carter, because hate is maybe a weird word to apply here, but maybe like when we're thinking about him, we should make sure that we realize that we are primarily engaging with not the human being Jimmy Carter, but instead the head of state Jimmy Carter. We are interacting with his job, which was fundamentally, unequivocally, an evil thing.
I feel like a very similar discourse, a little bit less so, I think, because Jimmy Carter has had such a rehabilitated personal image. But, I think a very similar discourse happened when Kissinger died.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
A lot of people were calling for, hey, like, at the end of the day, like, this was still a human person. This was a man who, like, he is dead. Like, he had loved ones, like, blah, 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 blah. And so, it's like, well...
I think in conclusion of this point, before we move on to talking about the Iran-Contra affair in earnest, this episode is officially in memory of Charlie Kirk. Thank you. Continue on. Then what happened?
So here's the thing, though, is that part of why I'm saying rare Jimmy Dub is because the Sandinistas overthrow Somoza's dictatorship, come to power themselves, and at first establish a transition governing junta, of which Daniel Ortega, who, if people are keeping up with contemporary Nicaraguan politics, is still a name to keep track of. But Daniel Ortega was part of this governing junta, and initially, the Sandinistas' political platform was the nationalization of Somoza's property, unionization of all workers, equality for women, and widespread literacy campaigns in the countryside. As this junta developed, Ortega wanted to push it further to the left, and there was an increasing splintering among this group. And Ortega specifically wanted to strengthen its relationship with the Soviet Union, eventually signing deals with the USSR for them to give economic, military, and diplomatic support to Ortega's government throughout the 80s. Since Ortega did end up consolidating power, and he declared a state of emergency in 1982 due to attacks from counter-revolutionary forces. And so it's time to talk about the counter-revolutionary forces.
Interesting.
That surely were not funded or trained at all by the U.S. military.
Oh no. That sounds like it's referencing something.
So the CIA had actually been backing anti-Sandinista groups since 1981, particularly after the Sandinistas joined Cuba in supporting other Marxist revolutionary movements across Latin America. So the CIA was financing, training, and arming the Contras, short for Contra Revolucionarios. And So fun little thing about how the CIA went about this is that, last episode we were talking about Iran. And so it's funny that should come back in this episode because, oopsie, the CIA did the Iran-Contra affair. And so, for context, 1979, Iranian Revolution overthrows the Shah, who had been ruling since 1941. Students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 52 American hostages. In response to this, Jimmy Carter placed an arms embargo on Iran as part of Executive Order 12170, which declared a state of emergency in U.S. relations with Iran, and, fun fact, has continued to be renewed since then. We are still in a state of emergency in the U.S. in our relations with Iran.
Interesting.
Interesting.
I wonder
Yes.
what kept that going.
Former presidents Joseph Roosevelt Biden re-signed the executive order in November of last year. So back in 1983, Congress passed the Boland Amendment, which prohibited federal funding of the Contras. And then the Reagan administration did it anyway. And the way that they decided to go about this was by selling arms to Iran and then using the money from that to fund the Contras. And so, yeah, this was extremely illegal, both as a violation of the Boland Amendment as well as a violation of, frenemy of the pod Jimmy Carter's executive order, that placed an arms embargo on Iran. And so this also was in contradiction to the United States' more formal backing of Iraq in this conflict between Iraq and Iran. And Reagan did admit that he knew about these dealings, but he claimed he didn't know that the money was going to the Contras. So Walker was filmed and then released in 1987, so this was 3 years before Ortega lost the general election. And he lost it to Violeta Chamorro, who was supported by a very broad coalition of liberals, communists, and conservatives who were seeking to end the Civil War that, in large part, was funded by the CIA. What is the movie saying about this?
This is in some ways the easiest of these I think we're ever going to deal with, in that it's so
I think so as well. One of the ways that I've been recommending this film to some of my other friends has been, very absurd, goofy depiction of American imperialism that hates Ronald Reagan so much.
Yeah. And it's interesting just because, Ronald Reagan obviously appears so little, but also is, in every action of the movie.
Yes.
There's a way in which, though, most of the time when people talk about the Iran-Contra affair, they don't really talk about, what happened in Nicaragua. The primary scandal of the Iran-Contra affair was the Reagan administration working behind the backs of the American people. That's the way that things were kind of framed, in that this was a way of doing something that was fundamentally illegal, that being both selling arms to Iran, a thing that was not a thing that we should be doing, says the American government itself, and sending money to the Contras, which is also a thing that the United States said it wasn't doing, or wouldn't be doing. So the way that a lot of critiques at the time, it's my understanding, talk about the Iran-Contra affair, and the way that I learned about it in high school, because there was at least a sentence maybe spoken by my high school U.S. history teacher about it,
yes,
was this is a bad action that Ronald Reagan's administration did. And maybe we mentioned Oliver North specifically as him being like the fall guy of it.
I mostly remember it being kind of lumped in more broadly with Nixon's actions. Sure. As these like going behind the backs of the American people and like going around this system of checks and balances that we hold on to so dearly.
Yeah, and there's a way in which like the existence of Oliver North is very fascinating from that perspective, because it's like it showed how Ronald Reagan could like get away with it.
Yeah.
The fact that he managed to have a fall guy, and that fall guy ultimately like kind of be seemingly celebrated a little bit. Like I don't know. I don't know what right-wing media looked like in the 80s necessarily, but like Oliver North as a character is like almost like an American folktale in his kind of existence. Interestingly, like there was Oliver North news this week. Wasn't expecting that crossover event between, you know, us and real life. So Oliver North got married this week. He got married to Fawn Hall, the secretary who shredded documents during the Iran-Contra affair. She was directly involved in it. They apparently reconnected because like one of their spouses recently passed away, and they reconnected at the funeral for one of their, you know, dead spouses. And got married, you know, so in like Fawn Hall is like in her 60s, I think, and Oliver North, how old is Oliver North? 81. They've gotten married.
I love a May-December romance.
And you know, as we've said in the past, Conflict Kino fundamentally is a pro-love podcast.
Yes, if there's one thing we believe in, it's love.
So congratulations, you know, to Oliver North and Fawn Hall. I gotta say, while I was looking at this, I learned that Fawn Hall was shortly in a relationship with Rob Lowe in the 80s. I don't want to unpack that. What the fuck? What is
happening?
Wait, so the same
like
year,
Atkins diet Rob Lowe?
Like what? Rob Lowe, sorry?
Like Atkins diet Rob Lowe?
Yeah, the actor Rob Lowe, like member of the Brat Pack. Rod Lowe, like Austin Powers #2 actor Rob Lowe. Yeah, in 1987 they dated, which is bizarre because like that was
1987?
87 they did, like the year that she is testifying to Congress that she shredded documents as part of the Iran-Contra affair.
Oh my god! Also, the year this film came out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, potentially. Yeah, I don't know. You know,
Alex Cox's power, truly.
Yeah. Oh man, what were we talking about? Oh, what does this movie have to say about this thing? I mean,
yes,
it is the most like dramatic skewering of Ronald Reagan I think I've ever seen. It is so pointed, and the way it uses its humor and its anachronisms are why it works. The fact it makes history relevant to the moment by stating that this history is cyclical, and ultimately drawing this direct parallel between Ronald Reagan himself and Walker in a way, is incredible. It's and like ultimately, like one of the other things that I know many of the Nicaraguans who were involved in the production of this film like felt was very important is he included images of the dead Nicaraguans who were murdered by the Contras at the end of the film, which I know is like in other contexts often makes me feel very uncomfortable. For example, like I watched Da 5 Bloods, and I felt it kind of in poor taste that a lot of images of corpses were used seemingly for somewhat shock value by Spike Lee. But here, this is like not only using those images to provoke an emotional feeling, it's also like getting the images out.
Yes.
Like, it is like in a way that I think is like not not a thing that we can really have context for in 2025, given that now if you want an image out, you just post it and now everyone sees it. Like that's but that's not the context of 1987. 1987, you needed like a news publication or something to pick up that image, and if the news is ultimately going to have a primarily sort of pro-American bend in who it chooses to cover. I mean, for a film that I think does have a lot to say about this exact thing, you aren't going to see those images. So you need some other way of bringing them out, and that is like one of the great things that it did. Though in impact, that is somewhat lessened by the fact that this film flopped like crazy. Yeah, but like. It's somehow like not only saying things about this conflict, it's also a part of it. Like it is participating in the conflict. I mean, like it had Sandinistas involved in its production. Yeah, it was ultimately a method of extracting money from American production companies and giving it to the Sandinistas. Like that is as praxis as it gets. That is the redistribution. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So like, yeah, I mean, what does this movie say about it? Like that's there we go. It's involved. Very much so. But I guess we can move on to what were other people saying about it, because we have, hinted about enemy of the pod, Roger Ebert. Yes. Which I'm hoping we will eventually get to a film that Roger Ebert liked. To be honest, okay, so speaking of other features of the pod, I think next episode, we might have a tiny bit of a redemption for our boy Jimmy Carter. Oh? We'll get back to it. But, returning back to our bad boy number one, Roger Ebert, I think it's super interesting that not only him specifically, but seemingly film critics in general were like unable to engage with what Walker is doing. I mean, well, a very, very brief excerpt from Ebert's 0 out of 4 star review of Walker. Christ. 0? Quote, he gave Taste of Cherry 1. No, this was 0 out of 4 stars. Which, if I recall correctly, Pink Flamingos. Also, really? 0 out of 4. Does he hate gay people too? Come on, Roger. No, I don't think he hates gay people. He just doesn't get it. That is, in some ways, Pink Flamingos is challenging in a similar way to this movie. But anyway, yes, we'll get to it. But anyway, whenever we do the war on the gays, we'll go watch Pink Flamingos. Next June, keep an eye out. Yeah. Anyway, Roger Ebert quote. What did he say? Roger Ebert quote: "If it is a comedy, it has no laughs, and if a satire, no target." End quote. That is so fucking crazy, actually. Like, what do you mean it doesn't have a target? Ronald Reagan is in the movie. Like, he's like, oh my god. And like, okay, I mean, I don't understand how he watched the same film that we watched, frankly. Yeah, I mean, like to a point, like a lot of the jokes, especially early on, are like somewhat slapstick. Like they're in a way that like it doesn't feel particular to the politics. Just like there is something about Ed Harris playing the piano in the middle of a gunfight that is like mesmerizing and funny. Like, yeah, I mean, even just like the walking scene that we were talking about earlier in Rivas, which was just a bit before when he starts playing the piano, and he's just walking, and you're watching all these people get gunned down around him, and he just feels like this figure out of time, out of place, in every way. And it's like, it's mesmerizing, but it also is like goofy. Like, it's, and like maybe, I don't know, like I could maybe imagine thinking that that's not the intent. Maybe if like, especially if you see this with like a kind of bad audience who is all like, I watched this, I've seen it a couple times now, typically in groups of like-minded people who are also laughing, and then by myself. And I think that maybe didn't bias me in that way. But like, when that drummer boy comes up to him ahead of that first battle and is like, hey, I've seen a lot of photos from battles, and I noticed that the kid carrying the drum is almost always dead in them. Could I, like, get a gun? That's really fucking funny. Like, that's really good.
And then like, Walker just does not, he talks for a while, but he does not actually respond to the content of the kid's request at all.
God is on our side. And then the kid fucking dies. Like, he's
like the first one down.
Yeah, like, that is so obviously a punchline. And, like, that's before we even get to, like, the political specific humor.
Well, I mean, even, like, right after the Battle of Rivas too, where they're just kind of, like, you know, bumming around on the shore. Yeah. And these other soldiers come up and they're like, Walker, you won. And then all the men just go nuts. Like, that's so funny.
Yeah, like, I mean, Ed Harris, I mean, like, this is, like, to the, like, more politically cutting thing that is both clearly satire and very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the funniest moment of the film is probably Ed Harris's delivery of, I'm a social democrat.
We are to survive. We are both aristocrats.
I am not an aristocrat. I am a social democrat. What's the matter with you?
Yes.
Like, that is just so, like, oh my god. Ed Harris, like, understands this man. And, like, from what I know about, like, the production of the movie, Ed Harris was, like, very much the leader of the movie. Like, the cast all looked up to him in kind of setting the tone of how the movie worked. So, like, the fact he was able to play this is so great. I'm almost disappointed that I can't recall any other Ed Harris comedy roles. And definitely not a comedy role that's anything like this. I mean, just because I don't know what other comedies are like this, but yeah. Oh my god. I don't know. So, like, the explanation that Alex Cox has for why this didn't work for people is essentially, like, it was uncomfortable with the comedy. Like, the comedy in lifting people out of it being a historical film, that being people are unable to see it as a perfect representation that they are now immersed in of what happened in the 1850s.
Mm-hmm. Like, and the, you know, forcing people to reckon with, you are also part of this history.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it challenged people just a little bit too much in a way that, like, feels to me, like, not to bring up a thing that was also brought up last episode, but, like, this is, like, very obviously Brechtian distancing. Like, actually, whereas last episode we talked about a film that didn't have it that critics said it did. This is one that I've never seen anyone apply that term to, that it actually is.
I did see one reviewer bring up that term, but just the one.
Yeah. Which is, like, it's a very, like, it is doing exactly what Brecht wanted. And it is, like, a politically praxis film. Like, it's obvious that it would be in the kind of pure way. So, like, that's the other thing that, like, makes me, like, really kind of sad that, like, critics at the time didn't get it, because, like, it is engaged directly in, like, these postmodern conversations that, like, film and theater at the time were engaged in. Like, it's not like, I don't know, like, it feels like 1987 is the perfect time for this movie to come out, actually. But apparently not for this audience. So the other thing that I know about its reception that was really frustrating is that like the distributors essentially chose to not distribute it much in Latin America, to the point that, like, apparently, at least according to Alex Cox, like, before the physical media distribution that came around, like, 2007, whenever they were making this DVD, like, the film was not really seen much outside of, like, the festivals it premiered at, and then the very limited theatrical release within the United States and Europe that flopped. So, like, this film, like, I mean, like, I think it is aimed primarily at an American audience, but, like, clearly there are also, like, jokes in the film that are primarily for a Nicaraguan audience. I mean, the fact that there's like that Mercedes driving by is explicitly, like, a Mercedes because of this kind of in-joke that the Sandinistas had. Like, that is, it does bum me out that, like, that could have been the success this movie could have had, but clearly, like, it was you know, the people financing the film didn't see that risk of distributing elsewhere as like worth it for whatever reason.
But, I mean, according to Alex Cox, when he was working on the film, like, Nicaraguans were overwhelmingly in support of the production.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And this is a thing that he mentioned a lot, even, like, with the extras. He talks a lot about the extras on the director's commentary. And he mentions throughout the idea that, like, he didn't have to direct the extras. They just got it. Like he was just like, hey, we're making a film about Walker. We're overlapping it with, you know, talking about the political situation right now. Do you want to be in it? And they were like, yes. And then he was just like, here's what's happening in this scene. And they know exactly what their perspective is as, like, the Nicaraguan people's perspective. And that's, like, such an interesting thing. Just because he is, like... this is another thing that I learned, like, the connections he made that ultimately facilitated the film existing was he, like, made Nicaraguan friends on one of these, like, left-wing kind of tourist trips. I don't know if folks are familiar with this kind of thing. It does still exist, like this kind of thing. I know, like, friends, for example, now who are academics on the left who will go to visit like compounds of the Zapatistas over the past few decades. Zapatista is probably most well known in the United States for being that group of radicals that Rage Against the Machine really likes. Legitimately, that is like the Rage Against the Machine is like specifically trying to start a revolution out of the Zapatistas. But anyway, like, there were these tourist trips that were, like, partially funded by the political mission because building connections and solidarity between the imperial periphery and the imperial core ends up being, like, really, really important. So it was on one of these trips of people going to Nicaragua that Alex Cox made this connection with the Sandinistas and ultimately facilitated this entire movie existing. So, like, I'm sure most of the extras were probably, like, a part of the movement, probably. I mean, like, they got it for that reason. So, like, it makes no sense that, like, every moment of the film, even things that the writer didn't write, like that speech coming from a Sandinista, is, like, the most informed perspective on this conflict that it could be, in terms of, you know, performance and writing. In ways that I'm sure there's probably, like, the thing that I would really love, which is maybe true of a lot of these films that I think we maybe just don't have for this one, is, like, are there some ways in which this history is depicted that a Nicaraguan audience, especially from the 1980s, would maybe not love? Maybe there are mistakes that we do not know about and were never made a big deal about because the film just was not distributed in Nicaragua. So, no way to know, but deserved better, that Walker. I mean, Alex Cox views this as his best film, or at least his favorite film, I think is what he said. Which I think is I think it's his best film. So, but yeah, and it killed his career. So, well, it was part of what killed his career.
That is one thing that's kind of interesting that I did want to bring up, is that there is this sort of, like, mythos about Walker as the film that killed Alex Cox's career, TM.
Yeah, which
and
I know is
very
maybe
often, yes. Well, I guess specifically the framing of it, particularly on the left, as it killed his career because Hollywood blacklisted him because it was too leftist, because it was too anti-imperialist, because, you know, he was raging against the machine that Hollywood was a part of, that these studios were a part of.
But, like, there was also the whole, like, he broke a picket line.
He did. He did cross the picket line of the Writers Guild of America's 1988 strike.
Yeah, which I don't even know what project he was working on at that point, because that was after Walker. I guess maybe it was Highway Patrolman. He could have been doing early work on. I don't know if he was doing commercials or something. I don't know how he pays his bills, but yeah, which is, like, so shameful and opposed to everything I would assume Alex Cox would stand for as someone who, like, is pretty politically aligned. Like, to cross the picket line is like a sacred betrayal. Which is just.
I did see he did an interview with the Real News Network where he was very dismissive of Hollywood unions.
Yeah.
Saying, quote, they don't have unions, they have guilds because the studios also control the guilds, end quote.
Yeah.
Which, likely informed his decision to cross that picket line, because he, may not have seen it as a legitimate picket line.
Yeah, which I've definitely seen people of that perspective. It does, like, I've known about this story for a while, and it does hurt how I feel about Alex Cox, just because
Same.
He's made so many movies that I love, and also that specifically feel so, like, correct about the world, at least, from my own perspective. They align with my own perspective, I guess. And to see him, do this, and both do that betrayal and also minimize that betrayal is just very, I don't know. Like there are definitely, like, critiques to be made along the lines of, kind of business unionism or, a union's ties often to the industry itself. To extend that tie to the strike, and though I don't know the context of what was going on in that strike in 1988, it's, like, pretty rare for, like, a strike to be in the interests of the boss.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I know, like, there is, like, this business unionism model of strikes are a thing that is your one participation in the union. So, like, on a cycle, you do a strike and then you go back to work and you continue to be exploited. Whereas, like, a more organizing model of union is, like, the union is not a thing that you wait for orders from. It is a thing that you are a part of. And like, that is, like, the radical way of engaging with that is not to cross the picket line. It's to get on the picket line and make different noise, which we've just seen with the actors' strikes recently. Like, there were definitely some actors out there making some very good noise. And whether or not you think, basically, I think there were actors that made it clear during that strike recently that we all saw, made it clear that the Screen Actors Guild is not, like, who is the president, the nanny? Why am I Fran Drescher? Yeah, she's the freaking, okay. The president. Why did I not remember Fran Drescher's name? Yeah, well, yeah. Don't you think of the nanny when you think of Fran Drescher?
I mean, yes, but
Okay.
that's just not.
Okay, I'm sorry. Should I have referenced Wes Craven's Stranger in Our House? What do you mean? Anyway, when people think of, though, the strike that just happened, you don't think of Fran Drescher, you think of the workers as a collective.
Yeah.
And, like, maybe there was something going on with that particular strike where people were thinking of it as the leadership acting without, the full consent of the workers themselves. But, like I said, like, I never think the reaction to that should be what he did.
Yeah.
It just feels, it looks so pathetic. So bums me out. That's not practice, Alex Cox. You were doing so well. All right. Are we feeling we've said our thoughts?
I think so. I was just about to ask you if you had any other thoughts on the film, on our friend Jimmy.
On our friend Jimmy. I think I've said my word on Jimmy.
All right.
Let's see. Did I have any other notes? Nope. That's about it for my notes.
That's it for Jimmy.
That's it for Jimmy.
At least
Carter.
For this episode.
Jimmy Carter coming back next week. No, next week. Next episode.
Next episode, what will we be watching next episode?
All right. So next episode is honestly, like, the episode that I knew we were going to do from when we decided to do this podcast. That being clearly, like, the central military conflict that the United States is engaged in, though kind of through proxy, is with Palestine. So we are going to be doing a film from Palestine, one of the in some ways, kind of first big dramatic hit out of Palestine. A film from 2005, Hani Abu Assad's Paradise Now. Film that has not been seen very often, but if you would like to see it, it is currently streaming on Canopy, which is pretty great. I think it's also on Plex's free film list. But yeah, it's free on Canopy, so if you have a library card and your public library happens to support Canopy, then you have a way of seeing it. Otherwise, I think it's rentable on VOD in various places. Not in the greatest quality. It has not been restored in a long time, so you might be watching it in standard definition. But I promise you that watching it in standard definition is worth a watch. So I'm looking forward to that next episode, Paradise Now, 2005.
All right. Looking forward to it as well. And where can our listeners find you?
I am on Letterboxd. I'm Pat Healy on Letterboxd. I think at Patappa, that being Parappa the Rapper, but with a T instead of an R, and without the Rappa. I am also, if you want to find our video essay work, you can find us at Kim and Pat on YouTube. If you want to email us, you can send any questions or feedback you may have, defenses of Jimmy Carter, perhaps, to...
defenses of Roger Ebert, perhaps.
Defenses of Roger Ebert, perhaps, to conflictkino@gmail.com. And where can people find you, Kim?
You can find me on Letterboxd as well. I am at Kim Lipso, which is just my name Kim with Lipso at the end, the back half of Calypso. And yeah, you can also find me on the Kim and Pat video essay channel.
Yeah, which new video coming pretty soon about Bob's Burgers. So be on the lookout for that, folks. Build anticipation. You know, whenever you mentioned earlier that your Hulu subscription was going out, I was like, oh no, how is Kim gonna watch Bob's Burgers?
I'm not gonna lie, that was actually the reason that I tried to access Hulu that day.
Well, no war but class war.
No war but class war.